All right, everyone, let's get started. So thank you for joining us, our data engineering interviewing series, workshop series with Anju and Mercian. So we'll be covering Python, SQL, and modeling throughout the series. And we're so glad to have all of you with us here today. So a little bit about our speaker, Anju. She graduated from Syracuse University, New York, with a master's degree in computer engineering. Her previous work experience includes, working at Intel for 5 years as an infrastructure engineer, VMware as a project manager, Intuitive Surgical as a business system analyst, and Omdena as a platform engineer. She's currently a data engineering consultant at Meta, formerly Facebook. And if you want to read more of her articles, you can read it at medium.com/, Anju Mercian. And yeah, Anju, I'm going to hand it over to you now.
Because this series is actually aimed kind of for the beginner level, but I want to include everybody, like beginner to intermediate and advanced. So that's what we're trying to understand. If this starts getting boring for you, and you want another series that says, hey, I just wanted to solve problems with you, or I want to go more problems, you can just let Eliza or me know on Slack, on Women Who Code Python Slack. Both of us are there. Just let us know, hey, we want to set more sessions where we can just solve problems, and then we can have a 1 hour session where we're just solving problems. That's something we're thinking about after the session. But if that's something you like, please let us know on Slack. So, my intro has already been given, and if you want to know more about me, this is my website link, so you can, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I also write blogs, so you can also check on my Medium blogs. All of these series also I write as a blog, so you will have like a written reference for you to go back to, and it's also recorded, so you'll have a YouTube video. So today we are just going to talk about data engineering interviewing as the first part, SQL. Today we'll talk about SQL, all of our SQL commands. What's actually, we're just going to focus mostly on what's important for data engineering interviews, usually what they kind of check on. And next week or the week after, we'll do more of data modeling and then go into Python. That's what my thought process is. And that's what we plan the series. So we'll go on talk about a little bit of an introduction to data engineering, then go over the technical skill, what's needed for a data engineer, and then the SQL fundamental concepts. So the goal of the series, why Eliza and I planned this series, is just to get a more understanding of how data engineering interview prep is like. I want to give you kind of a cheat sheet, because SQL is a lot, and I know many of you may already have a lot of insights you have a lot of online resources, but there's a lot. So this is something I was thinking as a cheat sheet that'll give you like an idea of what are the important topics to go over, and to remind yourself when you're actually trying to solve problems, because most of the questions will be surrounding all of these major concepts, and then we can solve problems over it. So that's a goal for the series that we have with all of it. So basically, interview series will have SQL, the technical questions, SQL, Python, and then the data modeling or data design, and that's what we want to cover in this series. So that's the goal that we have in our mind. And so every 2 weeks, I think 3 series we have in total. So every 2 weeks we'll have a series covering a particular topic. So what is a data engineer? And what is a data engineer, or who's a data engineer? So somebody that is actually trying to take the raw data and convert it into more accessible format for data scientists or business analysts or data analysts is actually the data engineer. So we are kind of in between from the raw data, then data engineers, and then it goes to data scientists, which actually previously the data analysts and everybody used to do, but since there's a lot more data there and a lot more a lot more stuff need to be done, massage, like a lot of more data that needs to be massaged. That's why we have data engineers now, because of all the a lot of data that we have. So basically we are like in between data scientists and raw data, cleaning it up for them, putting it into pipelines so it's easily accessible for them. That's actually what I do day to day. Is like the raw data or logs may be everywhere, and I need to based on what a project manager or a data scientist or analyst needs, I need to take in the raw data, try to find out where all the data is placed, then bring it into tables, neatly formatted tables, so that they just can go into particular tables and get their data, so for their ease. we have that. So that is what a data engineer does, and that's a data engineer. The one who always builds systems to collect, manage, and convert raw data into usable information for data scientists and business analysts to interpret. That is so, and we also have to make sure it's optimized way of accessing the data. Sometimes we may have to build dashboards too, like an analyst may need, but our main job is to clean the data and make it accessible. So this is how actually a project goes about for a data engineer. First, we talk to the stakeholders. The stakeholders can be a business analyst, project manager, or a data scientist, or product managers. Then we go in and gather the data based on the business question or business problem. And then we explore, assess the data. Then we have to define the data model, then run the ETL. So basically, we have to extract, transform, and load. Extract the data from where we have, transform it to the way we need it, and then load it into a different data pipeline or a different data table. Then we create data pipelines. Data pipelines is nothing but just putting the tables into its particular location. So automatically, the data keeps updating, because we'll have upstream, we'll have lots of different tables. So when we're taking from the upstream, from different tables, we need to, and bringing it into a downstream table, we need to make sure the downstream table is updated whenever the upstream table is updated. So in order to do that, it's better to do an automatic job. So there'll usually be cron jobs that you'll have to automate, run, and make note of. Those are some things actually we'll go into the third step of our the series. I'll talk about what are the different data pipelines that are available right now for us to use outside, because many big companies will have their own data pipelines, but but there are ones outside too. So we'll talk about that the third part of the series. That's something very good to know, especially for startups. Knowing what is available out there will actually help you in the job search process. Then we usually build the data on the dashboard, or just, if it's usually to a data scientist, we just say, hey, these are the tables that are available for you. You can use these tables. For project managers or product managers, we create dashboards. That's how our data engineers' project life cycle is. Okay, the technical skills that I've needed very much for a data engineer is Python and SQL. Everything that we do day in and day out, we are working on Python and SQL. And also, it's always good to know something like Apache Airflow. Apache Airflow is that's what automates data pipelines. It's owned by Google right now, but we can open sources and we can work on it. So Apache Airflow automates the data pipelines. Usually for startups, it's very good to know this. The third series, the having a cloud background, the Apache Airflow for data pipelines, and then PySpark. PySpark is usually the PySpark we use when we're doing multiple, like parallel computing, right? Like when we have to break the data down into different processes parallelly, we use PySpark. But a day-to-day job will usually involve SQL. SQL is the main thing that we use every day, and that's always in every data engineering interview. That's something that's very tested in depth. The SQL. Python is just to know that you have programming skills. They test on Python, so you need to know how to quickly put together code and everything in Python. So knowing dict and zip and all that will become very important. So those are the technical skills. So the data engineering interview. A data engineering interview usually has 3 to 4 rounds. Mine was around 4 rounds, and it depending on the company, depending on whether it's a startup or a big company, the interview the number of rounds change, but the way the interviews have been held for so long has been the same. I've spoken to many people, and they always say the same thing, that this is how the interview goes. First, they start off with an interview technical round. The technical round is if you've attended a Google interview, they'll give you 45-minute question, right? So the same way for data engineering, they have it. But the difference is they'll give us 1 hour for SQL and 1 hour for Python. Okay. And the 1 hour doesn't mean just one question. They can give as many questions as they want. The thing with that is, the most thing that is needed in that first session is your speed and your in-depth knowledge of SQL. So if they give you a question, they sometimes it can also be an online test. So if it's an online test, it's mostly like 1 hour, how many questions you complete. For me, it was an online test. So in one, they gave me 1 hour and said, how many questions you get right, that is how they'll cut me off, the cutoff. The same thing for Python. But sometimes it can be an online the virtual person sitting, and the main thing that we focus on, how quickly you can solve the problem to showcase your knowledge on the subject, and how many you get right. You need to get we need to get the most right for that. And for big companies, it's usually you need to get like 8 or 9 out of 10 questions. If they give you 10 questions, getting 8 or 9 is very important for us to go to the next round, and also even to clear the complete interview. The same thing with Python. The Python questions are not like, trees and graphs or dynamic programming. It's not that level. It'll be mostly that you get to use zip, zip, list, lambda functions. So knowing these kind of one-line answers. So in 1 hour, if you can complete 10 questions like that, and even in Python, quickly, that's how they test your knowledge for the first round, the technical round. So solving as many as SQL questions the best way possible will be to our benefit. The second and third rounds will usually, once you complete this first round with the SQL and the Python questions, they kind of get a knowledge of SQL, and then moving on, it'll be with a one-on-one interview with the interviewer, and it'll be data modeling based. So basically, they'll give you a scenario. They'll say, okay, as a salesperson, I'm asking, as a sales analyst, I would like to know how are the sales doing for this particular product for the past 3 months for this particular quarter. So this may be the only question that they give you. And then you have to ask different questions like, okay, where am I getting the data from? And then get the data from these, what are the different tables you want? What are the different points, like, what do you say? What are the different variables that you would like me to cover in that particular, to help you to get you the data, like what are the different months, and so which quarter, what would you like to see, So some of the questions that you need to ask, it'll be like a very kind of a talkative rounds will be where you get to design the whole database for them, and to showcase your skills on designing that data modeling or database. That will be that second and third rounds, and that's how it goes. Data engineering interviews. If anybody has any questions, please do ask in the chat. I think we have moderators moderating the chat. They can answer, or I'll have a Q&A and I'll go over the questions at the end too. So somebody asked me, how long does each interview last? So the SQL and Python is 1 hour. Usually the technical round, that first round is 1 hour, 1 hour each. And the other rounds also mostly be 45 minutes to 1 hour beyond that. But I know for a fact, many of the people I spoke to in many different companies, they said the same thing about SQL and Python. Is it was like 1 hour long, and how many questions you can answer to showcase your depth of knowledge. And then when you're like doing one-on-one with interviewers, it's usually with the interviewer. So if you're able to like finish faster. Yeah, so Larry asked, is it like the first normal form? Yes, first normal form, second normal form, and also something called dimensional modeling, fact modeling. I'll cover that in the next section. That's a whole subject in itself, actually, Larry. It's a whole subject in itself. It's a lot. If you do want to read more about it, actually I've written a blog already, so it's on my blog. I think I wrote the last blog I've written is actually on data modeling, so you can read that. Okay, so now I'm going to go into SQL fundamentals. Here, I just want to give a disclaimer for anybody who finds it boring, because for somebody. How to get an entry-level data engineer position? That's actually a very good question, because I was data entry level once. I started off volunteering as a data engineer, or if you're in a company that has data engineering positions, you can ask to like work for them for some time and then move slowly. But actually right now there's a lot of need for data engineers. So if you can actually, if you're going from directly from school, if you've done a project and you can showcase the project, and that will be helpful. You can showcase the project.
So we have a lot of questions coming in before we can start with the SQL fundamentals. Do you want to answer maybe a few of them, Anju?
Yeah, I'll answer a few of them, and I think I'll give 4 minutes, like 5:30. I think I'll go into SQL fundamentals, because what I want to do is I want to go over some questions with you here. So
Sure.
so one sec, yeah.
So I can give you some of the questions. Someone sent a private, Jim, they're asking if you have a SQL certification, experience in this area, you still have to go through the series of like SQL questions, like in interviews, like in your opinion?
Yes. Everybody have to go through the SQL round, even if you have the SQL. This one, but that'd be helpful having a SQL certification, but you will have to go through the first round of SQL interviews.
Another person asked, so would being a data analyst be a good entry point into data engineering, you think?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. If you're a data analyst, you can showcase that you have SQL knowledge and that you have the knack for analyzing and looking at data. So
Okay. Someone else asking about where do you recommend looking for volunteer positions? I know, like as Women Who Code, we have our channel of volunteer hyphen opportunities, and we usually host an onboard session every month. And also, you can volunteer with your local Women Who Code chapter to help run events. I'm just question. Did you also answer how to get entry level data engineer position?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you already answered how to do the route. Okay, and then before we go SQL fundamentals, the questions will we be focusing on beginner or intermediate for this session?
The questions will be focusing on beginner.
Okay, and
Like
then
actually in the beginning, actually with the beginner, the first question will be beginner. The second and third question may be a little more intermediate, but I can walk through that with you. And I don't even know whether we'll get through the third question because we're already at 5:30. I don't want to keep you here for longer, but definitely we'll have another session based on the interest, and we'll just solve problems. So in order to do that, if you're very new to SQL or if you want a refresher, this would be a good refresher. This
okay,
presentation will be a good refresher.
yeah. Okay. Oh, someone's saying if they want to volunteer for data engineering roles, I think it's just like a bit tricky. I don't know how to answer that one because I know it's like data is always like really important for each companies.
Yeah.
What would you recommend, Anju?
There's actually one volunteer position called omdina.com. They take volunteers. Also, you can look, if you're in the, you can find some volunteer opportunities and then help them build out a database or something like that. I worked for Omdina as a volunteer. Like I was doing a full-time job and working for Omdina as a volunteer before actually they hired me as full-time. But I did work for them as a volunteer for some time.
Okay, how do you type it out in the chat?
Oh,
The
yeah.
Dina, sorry. Thank you. Perfect. So I'll just say if like people can't see in the recording. So omdena.com.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And so we have one more minute. Do we have any other questions, folks? Okay, that's a no. All right, Jude, it's back to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we go over SQL fundamentals. So starting from the beginning for SQL, like how accounting is language of money, biology is the language of so Rima asked this the SQL or the database that I'm using for the questions here. So I'm actually using something called Scrata Scratch. The link will be shared when I'm sharing when I share the first question. Eliza or somebody from the team will actually share the link. It's actually a platform where you can actually practice questions. It's like LeetCode, but just for data engineering questions. So that is where I'm looking at questions from. So I'm not completely concentrating on one data set for the whole thing. It's just I'm looking at the Scratch for questions.
Right, and we'll post these questions and links to like in the Slack channel for folks who may have missed the live event.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, back to you.
Scratch. It's I'm not sponsoring them or anything. I just want a disclaimer. I like to use them for questions. So they are like LeetCode. So okay. Tongue twister. Yeah, it is, Jenny. Okay, so why is SQL being used all over the industry is only because SQL has become an easy way of using, an easy way of learning. There are many other different languages out there for manipulating data, and many different companies also kind of base it on SQL. But SQL has become the golden standard for data to handle, especially relational database. And that's why the SQL is given the crown, but there are many different languages, and when you join many different companies, I think Oracle have their own, but they'll test you on SQL. If you know the SQL, how SQL works and all of the statements there, they'll have their own. Some companies will have their own flavor of it. So SQL has been widely used in the industry. Everybody from business analyst, data steward, data admin, anybody working on data use a data SQL. And actually, right now I'm only working on SQL because I'm not working on non-relational database. I'm only working on relational database. But sometimes it's also good to know non-relational like data like Cassandra. But I have never heard anybody asking in interviews. So, but if you know, it's just a plus point for you. Okay, so the SQL, the one thing you have to remember SQL is set-oriented query language. So it focuses on the what compared to the procedural language like Python, it focuses on how to get the data. Right? So it's very straightforward, like what data you need, and we just focus on that. Like if you see the difference here, like we want from a student from a student table, we want just a name, so it just focuses on what it wants. But whereas in the procedural language, it's like goes over how to get it right. So read the whole line, and then so that's the kind of the difference between a set-oriented language and a procedural-oriented language. And SQL is a set-oriented language, so it focuses on the what. So basically a SQL. A SQL works on a relational database that's as a collection of related tables, is assigned a unique name, and the tables are designed to keep track of some aspects of the real world. So just like the example here, like it has different tables, they're connected to each other in like many-to-many or one-to-many format. We won't talk about many-to-many relationships here. We'll talk about it during the data modeling class. So this is how relation tables are, and usually it has a column name, data type, and whether they're null or not null. Those variables are taken care of. So the column headers are called attributes. Then there's a domain of the corresponding columns. I have when we share out this presentation, I have the source where I actually get all the information from. They're all different sources. These are all the sources I use personally to kind of get knowledge and understand SQL if I have any questions to go back to and understand. So categorization SQL command. So this is something to remember when you're working on kind of have it in the back of the head to make sure that we connect all of our SQL commands. So the categorization SQL commands. So SQL commands is like 4 different types of SQL language commands are divided into 4 different types. One is the data definition language, the data query language, the data manipulation language, and the data control language. So the data definition language is something like create, drop, truncate, alter, comment, rename. And data query is our select statement, the data query language. Because why I wanted to focus on this is because sometimes when you are talking to a senior data engineer or a data engineering manager, they'll just say like, okay, let's use the DQL or let's use the DDL. Then we shouldn't be like, oh, what the hell is the DDL? So sometimes I have faced that, oh, let's use the DQL. And for the first time when I heard it, I was like, I literally, I think I looked very dumb in front of the manager. But so that's why I wanted to like just point it out. So sometimes, they use those language. I don't know why they do that, but maybe they are used to it. That's like kind of good. So having this in mind is good to know, especially when you're talking to the interviewer one-on-one, and then when you're designing your document or you're designing your data. it kind of, showcase that, hey, you're advanced and you're kind of into SQL and you kind of, know it all. So like that. So data query language is a select statement. The data manipulation language is all our insert, update, delete statements. The data control language is grant and revoke. These are getting more important now with privacy laws and all the privacy stuff. So there are different types of privacy on tables, lower level privacy and column level privacy and all that you will face that in every company. They will have higher level UIs to help you with granting and revoking access, but that's something, just to keep in your head, not for interviews, but this is just to know for your day-to-day work. So the different SQL commands, we have the create table. So the create table is create table. You give the table name, create table, table name, then the column names with the data type of the column and null or not null column. Usually the primary key will be a not null key, and also a foreign key should also be a not null. And then so we have here in this customers table, what I have as an example is we have ID, name, age, address, salary as the columns, and the primary key is ID, and salaries of decimal, addresses of type char, age is of type int, and name is of type varchar. So that's a SQL create. So basically SQL create creates the SQL the table for us. So it creates a table customers for us in a particular database. Usually what we have before customers will have something like XDB or SQL, like whatever we have named the database. So it'll be database name dot the database table. That's the database. That is the database in which the database table will be created. So we create the database, then we can update and insert. So this is how we insert into customers. So insert into customers, the ID, name, age, address, salary. We should always make sure when we insert it that the comma and the space, everything is actually taken care of, because sometimes some SQL give us issues and you'll be stuck in it for like hours together wondering why. But usually yeah, so it's better to kind of note whether there's a space or not space. So knowing these not formulas, these templates will be very important to us. And then insert into tables with all the columns, the values that you want to give it. And then if you want to update a particular column with a different set of column values, this is how you update. Update is when you're only updating a particular column on the table instead of having to, after inserting the column, when you want to update it, that's when you use the updater. While I'm going through this, if any of you have any questions or you want me to stop and go in depth into a particular command, please let me know, because these are, since it's a very beginner level and I'm guessing many of you here may already know this, I am going very fast, but if you want me to like stop and go over them one by one, please ask me the questions. Do we specify all the, no, you don't need to specify. That's a good question, actually, Reena. You don't need to specify all the columns. So if there's only ID column that you want, ID column is primary key, so you can update the name column you want to update, you can only update the name column. You don't have to like do all the other columns. You can update a particular name column. Like if I want to change the age of the salary of the person based on a particular condition, that column alone you can change with update function. What does update do at the high level? So what does update do is in the same table itself, it changes the particular. So if, for example, you have name Ramesh, you want to change the name Ramesh to Anju, for example, it will in the same in place itself, it doesn't create a different table, a temporary table. In the same table, it changes that value from the name Ramesh to Anju, or the name or the age from 32 to 33. It changes the value in the table. Hope that you understood that. So in the whole table, so basically it's like in an Excel, if you're making a change, for example, you have an Excel sheet, you have Ramesh 32, Ahmedabad 2000, and you need to change the age, you just go in and change the age to 33 and it sticks to the value, right? The same thing happens behind the scenes in the SQL table too. It changes that value from 32 to 33. What is the primary key in the previous year? The primary key is actually, you're asking me what a primary key is. So a primary key is actually a unique key that identifies the table. It's a unique key for the table. So like if you're working for a company, your company ID, right? They give you a company ID. That company ID will be a unique identification to identify you as a person. That is the same way that we have for tables too, SQL tables. It identifies you as a person or identifies that particular column, row information. So for this, for Ramesh, for example, if you have here, ID is 1. So his primary unique key that has been given to this particular row data is that 1. So primary key is used to uniquely identify that particular row data. So when you are like combining tables with the different table, if you can combine it based on this ID, if they have, so you have a customers table and you have employees table, so you want to know which employees are also customers of your particular product, you can identify them based on the ID. So the customer ID will be one unique ID, and then you can take a employee ID, but based on the employee ID, you can try to find out the customer ID, like a primary key is automatically incremented, updated when you insert or update new rows. Matt, actually, that's a very good question. It depends on the database and how you create the table. So like certain databases, like MySQL also, MySQL or Postgres, they have a way to say auto increment. So if when you're creating the column, if you say here, for example, here, ID int not null, you can actually add auto increment or another based on the database that you're using. You will have you can use another like for here example, since it's been mentioned here primary key ID, it'll automatically increment. But if you don't mention something like this, it will not automatically increment. So based on the database, we need to find out what kind of auto increment they have for that for that can be on, you can search online. So if you're using MySQL, just say how to automatically increment primary key, they'll give you something. There'll be a particular syntax for it. Postgres, there's auto increment syntax that you can use. After this not null, you can say auto increment and automatically increment. But if you don't specify that particular thing, and if you just create a table without this primary key or without making a note that this particular column is a primary key, it will not auto increment. And each time you create, there'll be duplicates, and that will be an invalid table. So thank you. Those are actually very good questions. I didn't cover those because it's right now when you're working for somebody, right? Like they automatically do everything for you. You completely forget that this is something you have to think about, But these are all very good questions. Thank you for asking these questions. Okay, so those are all you're creating the table, you're inserted columns into the table, you know how to update the columns in the table. Now you have the table ready, right? So now the select statement. So for interviews from here, this is where it'll actually get very interesting and important. The select statements. The select statement basically selects what you want from the table, queries the table with what you want, and Eliza brings out the value or showcases the value. So so basically you select whichever column you want from the table. So it's column 1, column 2 is the name of the table, and it's from which table you want. So when you specify that, it will give you that information. So here, when you say select star, it'll give you everything from the table, all the columns, all the rows, everything, whatever is data in the database, it'll give in the particular table, it'll give it to you. Select distinct when you say use the word distinct, it'll give you non-duplicate or unique values. So if you have multiple different types of names, but you only want like one particular name, then you say select distinct name from a particular table, from customers table. It'll give you only one of the names instead of having multiple names. And this, the last one, very important, is this is a very tricky question that they always ask in interviews, or they expect you to know, is that when you do a select star, like I said, you get all the information from that particular table, which is not actually very good, especially if you have a large database. When you have a large database and if you say select star, what if 1 terabyte of data comes, right? So you should always have this limit at the end, limit 3 or limit, like whatever your limit is, you should be there. And this is very particularly important in interviews, is because they want to know whether you understand the table very well. So always it's better to ask, if you're talking to one-on-one with the interviewer, or if it's an online question, just write limit 10. Limit 10 by default, just limited. But if you are talking to an interviewer, just ask, do you want me to use limit? Like, would you like me to use limit? Like, what was the limit number you want me to use? So that they know that, that if you do select star, you're going to get everything in the database, which is not good. It reduces your performance. It takes time to buffer, and it's useless. You may not be looking for all the data. So, and just like taking up resources just to give you all the data. Usually in companies, they always set the limit by default. Many databases will have, when you're working constantly on a database, by default, they'll set a limit to like 10,000 or 1,000 or something. Data, say, don't give you more than that particular data, and you're not querying the whole database or the whole table. But this is something really to note, especially in interviews, to make sure that at the end you have a limit that says this is the limit of rows of data I want. Right? So you select star. So star will actually give you everything in the table, but limit will only be the 3 or 10 columns that is needed. Okay. Any questions on select? I'll also go to the from and the where clause. So like the from clause is from which table that you're getting the data, and where is a very interesting. So it's actually a logical operator. So you, from a particular customer's table, you want somebody that bought products more than $500, right? So you're selecting the names of customers from a particular names of customers from a customer's table who bought product for more greater than $500. So it'll be like select customer name from table customers where product value greater than or equal to 500. Right? Those kind of where conditions come under the where clause. So the comparison operators like less than, greater than, less than, equal to, not equal to, and like. So when there is string, there is like that is used. So find sometimes years are stored in string. So you can say where year equal to where year like 2023 or percentage 2023, like that. Those kind of condition statements are there in the where clause. So that is your select from where, right? Now, these are all the commands in SQL at a glance. Okay, you have your select statement, you have distinct. So distinct ensures that you get only the one particular non-unique row, non-duplicate rows. Then your from statement, we'll come back to join. I've not spoken about join yet. Join on will come together. Then you have your where clause. Then you have your group by clause. So group by is something where your aggregation. So you're finding the sum. So sum of total products bought from the customer's table, right? So when you're using sum, the aggregate function like sum, average, max, min, you have to use group by. I think I need to write this. I think you use group by. So when you use a sum of, and whichever column is not in the sum, you need to actually group by that those columns. So a group by gives you like the use for non-aggregating columns. So if you have an aggregated column like sum or average, then the non-aggregate columns that you're using in a particular statement, that should come under the group by clause. Okay, so if there's one aggregation the column is not aggregated, the group by is used on a non-aggregated column, right? So for example, if you are salary, for employee salary, right? If you're taking employee salary, you're getting the employee ID, the employee first name, and the sum of the salary. Then the sum of the salary is actually an aggregate function. The sum of all the salaries, and the employee ID and the employee first name that you're taking is not an aggregate function. So when you come to the group by, you write group. So you say select employee ID, comma, employee first name, and comma, sum of employee salary from employee table, where you can have a where clause. If there's no where, it's fine. Group by employee ID, comma, employee first name. The non-aggregate functions should come in the group by. Okay, that's how we have it in the SQL function. And then having and actually group by are the same. Group by can exist without an aggregate function, but having exists only with the aggregated columns. Like if the sum of salary is greater than 0, so then we can say having sum of employee sal greater than 0 or greater than 1. That is the having clause. Then you can order by. So order by, you can have a particular column, you can order it by ascending order or descending order. So you can have for an employee table, the salary can be ascending order or descending order, and you can say order by employee sal. ASC is for ascending, DESC is for descending order. And then limit, like I spoke about, limit. So you can have the number of rows that you're limited to. So these are all the commands and the syntax order of the commands. Now I'll show you order of SQL execution. So you have a SQL statement. The logically or the behind the scene operation of the SQL statement is different from what you see on screen, like how you write it, right? It goes in a different way, like how it processes a SQL statement in a different way. The SQL statement first starts from the from clause. So because it needs to first identify which table you're looking at, right? So it goes to the from, it takes which table, then it does. So if there's a join, it does the join second. The join and on are actually together. Okay, I will come to that a little later. And then it goes to the where clause. So it first does the from which table it has to grab. Then if there are any conditions, it goes to the where clause and looks at the conditions. Then does a group by if there's a group by or a having. Then goes to select statement. So select is not the first one that's executed when the SQL is run. That's something very interesting to note, and there's something you should know, because when you're thinking of a problem, okay, Alexandra said you want to, yeah, when you're thinking of the problem, you should actually think this way for you to be able to solve the problem. So it will be interesting. So when you have like a select statement, just a plain select statement, the select statement is not executed first. You, as a user, you're looking at the select statement, but the SQL is looking at the from statement. Oh, from this table, okay, there's a where clause. So let me go calculate the where clause and then select the columns that they're asking me to select. Then if there's a distinct and order by, it does that later. So basically distinct and order by is basically to get you the proper, the user required conditions. But that is how the flow goes for order of execution. This is something to remember and to note. This is very important actually in all of these slides. Is one very important slide to have to note. Then it does distinct, then order by, and then limit. Okay, so limit is the last one that is usually executed. Okay, so right now we have a question, SQL question. We can go over that, and this can help us think through this. This is the first. It should be a very beginner's question, but if you have any questions, you can ask. So I think Eliza, can you share the practice question one? Eliza already shared the practice question. So I'll give you some time. I'll give you like 2-3 minutes. Please don't mind going a little over. I'll give you like 2-3 minutes to go read over the question and try to see if you can solve it. You can see in the link, or you can see in the question here. This is the table, the Forbes _ Global 2010, 2014, and these are the columns. So in this question is asking, find the 3 most profitable companies in the world. Output the result along with the corresponding company name. Sort the result based on profits in the descending order. Okay, so I'll give you a few minutes. I think around 7:02, and then we'll solve the question together.
I also want to add, for folks who may follow this in recording, we will be sharing the practice question link when we have this upload to GitHub and in our Slack channel, Data Science Study Group. But yeah, it's platform.scratch.com /10354-most-profitable-companies !tab name = question.
I recommend doing LeetCode forms at all in prep for DE interviews. Should I review DS and Algo? So Matt, I have not found like especially like graphs and trees and dynamic programming, those kind of high level questions like a software engineering is not something I have found people asking for data engineering questions, but the medium level and the easy level questions have been asked for in LeetCode. So nothing regarding trees, but recursion, they can ask recursion. They can not linked list, but they can ask recursion, something like that. So something very light. The easy form of LeetCode is what usually is asked, and Python is usually only asked in the first technical round. It's not asked later on. They just want you to know, because all of these pipelines that they created, right, the data pipelines, they are all based off Python. That's why they're testing us on Python. So just making sure that you understand how Python works, the basics of how Python works should be good enough. So not you don't have to solve like software engineering questions in LeetCode. With data structures, too much algorithm. With data structure and algorithms only in the beginning, like maybe linked list, understanding linked list, recursions. Recursions they may ask recursions. Recursion asks for me 2 questions were recursion based, but not trees, graphs, and programming. No. Do you recommend Basecamp for basic Python? I actually don't know about Basecamp. I don't know.
We do have a beginner Python series. Right, our YouTube beginner Python series, which is usually on Saturdays. It's based on existing YouTube recordings. There's also, we're doing Python crash course, like with the book. We do exercises from each chapter once a month. But I just recommend like whatever you find useful, just like to learn the fundamentals and like just practice doing those over and over. So it's like, it becomes like a second like language for you.
Yeah, I think that's good. I had not checked that out, but if you that'll be very useful. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like it's the only feedback I've seen when using these like online courses, because there's a lot. Like there's Coursera, there's a Data Camp. People can read straight from a book. But just for us with the Webnicode Python community, like we help keep each other accountable. We can work with someone who's like teaching or learning like the material with us. So because sometimes when I'm like reading a book or like learning a new skill by myself, it's like I might procrastinate. Right. So.
Boa, I think you can go to this series. That I think that'll be some fundamental, because fundamental is basically not like one book that I would recommend. I would recommend like a lot of different websites and web series. I think Udacity has like a fundamental Python course that's useful. And also I think this series seems to be very interesting. I haven't attended one, but this series seems very interesting. So you can take a look, and if they have YouTube videos, you can take a look at that. It's actually that's also one reason why I wanted to put this series together, because you can have one place where you can go and find out what you want. And so I think that this Python beginner YouTube can be one place where you can go and get all the information that you want. because there's a lot of information on the internet, but it's spread everywhere. So if you don't know what exactly you're looking for, you may get lost. So, okay, are there any more questions? Yeah, that's correct. So yeah, that's something you can do. And also, like I swear for the next class or something else, or even on the, I think Eliza, we have a Slack chat, right? So even there I can share more Python resources too. If you join the Slack chat, and we can talk through it. Okay. Okay, so let's get to solving the problem. Okay, so we'll get to solving the problem. So here, let's go over the question, what we have. Find the 3 most profitable companies in the entire world. Output the result along with corresponding company name. Sort the result based on profits in descending order. So basically what they're saying is based on the profits that we have here, based on the column profits. So because they're asking for the profitable company. So based on the profits, they want us to print out the profits and the company of the just the company name in descending order, basically, and only the top 3. So I'm going to start from the from option. So from the table name, let me take the table from the table name here, right? So I'm doing the from the table name. Do we have a where clause? I don't think we have a where clause. They just want us to order by. So I'll select the from the table name. So I'll select the company name. So what is the company name? Column is company, comma. Actually, I like to put always it's company column, and then the profits. So we have a profits column in this particular table. Profits. Okay, from the company, right? Then I'm going to order by profits, the column profits, right, in descending order because they want the highest first, right? And then they are asking me to limit to top 3. Okay, that's what they're asking me to do. They're not asking, there's no where conditions, nothing here, but this is what they're asking. So from the table, they're asking me to get the profits, sort the result based in descending order, this one. So here, actually, they have wonderful thing. We can check what the expected output they want is, right? And then you can run your code. And it's like the expected column is the same. So then you can submit it and it'll be solved. Since I already submitted, so I solved it saying solved, but this is how you do it. So here they have expected output. So that gives us what the expected output is. They gives us a ring. Here they're saying use rank. That's why I said this is the basic function. Rank actually comes under Windows function. Okay. So we have that here. So yes, so this is how you solve it. Hope you have any questions. Okay. Okay, Larry has said, yes, Larry, that was right. What you have done, and is there a more advanced or optimal way, or is it straightforward? Question. So here, if you see in the approach hints, they said use rank. So that's where they're confusing us. So rank is actually the more advanced session, more window, what is it, advanced window functions that you use. So here, instead of just getting the profits just as is, we can say rank over profits and get the profits that way. So that will be a little more complicated. The complication doesn't come with the question. The complication actually comes with the way they've asked us to solve it. And this is a very tricky way in interviews too. You may look at the question and be like, okay, this is a very easy question, I'm going to do it. But then the interview will give you a hint and say, why don't you use a window function? And a window function is nothing but this rank row number, which I'll actually come to here. they'll say that's the complication that they put. But this is actually a straightforward question. Or they'll put the question in such a way that, okay, I don't want the static profit. So this is basically a static profits, right? I want a running total of the profits or running profits. When they say they use the word running total or running profits or something with a running, you need to use something like window functions, because what the window function will do is it'll basically cut the table to until that period, until that time, and then it'll rank it or row number it. Okay, so so those may be that will be the complexity of the question. So this looks like a basic question, but when the interviewer asks you, it'll say, okay, then you have more and more complexity to it. So so that's why I said let's solve it the beginner way, because I just wanted to show how to select and from and how you have to think through it. But the complicated way will be to use a window function. In the technical interview, would someone need to know window function? Yes. Yeah, yes, Dan, it's very important. Actually, this is very, very simple question. This is only like a beginner level, just to get you kind of feet wet in this one. But most of the time, the sad part, even I don't like it though, but the sad part is they do ask more of joins, more of subqueries, which we're actually going to get into now, right now in this one, and the window function. They will ask too many window function questions, but they will ask you at least two, as far as I ever heard, that they touch base on window functions. Can you show us the answer using rank? Yes. Let me. Yes, I can show the. 1 second. Let me reshare it. Okay, I just have to write it again, I think. Solved it. Okay. Can everybody see my screen now? Okay. So this is using both a subquery and the rank function. So, right. So when you're using so if you use only this rank function, right, you're only going to get the yes. So run this code. This is only going to give you the ranking. Okay, so this is going to give you the ranking of that profits. So this is so it will first rank it. Now from that you need to get the top ranks, right? You need to get, so this ranked it for you. So what is ranking is basically when you have the top four, it gives you the rank, right? Your first rank, second rank, third rank. That's how it is. This gives you the ranks. And then from that ranking, you need to select the company and the profits. Here, actually, instead of, because we have ranking, we can use ranking less than 4 instead of using limit, limit over here. Hope that answered the question. Is that query better? No, it is not a better query, because here, for this particular question, it's not better, because it's unnecessarily we have to do a window function, which actually takes more processing behind the scenes, because ranking will only take for a particular window, so it'll do every window. So it'll take the first 10, do that as a window, the second 10, and then do that as a window, and they keep taking ranks. So for this particular question, it's not, but because their interview is asking us to use rank, we're using the rank. But for many questions, like I just solved an issue for my company where we had to use rank and row number, or profits. Usually profits for current profits is always like running total, right? Or running sum of salaries. Running total of salaries. Those will be all come under rank and window functions, because you need to get the running total. when they say running total or running file, anything that's running, you need to use window functions because it'll take in windows. It'll take in snippets. Why did you use order by profits test? Because here, here, if you're asking why I'm doing it here, because within the rank function, I'm ranking based on profits, and I'm doing it descending order. If you just say order by profits, it does ascending order. So you have to make sure it's descending order. And why am I doing order by is because the question asked me to get the profits in descending order. And why am I doing profits again here in descending order? Because again, for the output, I need profits in descending order. So you are sort of creating a temporary ranking column, which makes it easier to glance at, yes, glance at and determine ranking. Yes, that is correct, ma'am. That is correct. So this will become that we are creating a temporary column to get the ranks, and based on the ranks, we are giving the output for companies and profits. What does running total mean? Running total is basically something that keeps changing by month or by day. So by day, so profits usually change, right? From compared to last month, we have this month different profit. The next month we'll have a different profit. So basically, that's changing all the time. That's continuously changing. That's what running means. Something that's continuously changing or keeps updating regularly. Yeah, Tyra said, yeah, for the outer query, it sorts the. Yes. So within the ranking, it sorts for the ranking, it orders by the descending order. And I do it on the outside query so that I can get for the output, I can get order by profits. Does anybody have any other questions? Okay, so yeah, in this, how Alexandra has asked, how do we know the order in which it's run? So yes, first this from is executed, right, Alexandra. So this from is executed as per the order of execution. This from will be executed, and a temporary column, temporary table will be created because this is a subquery. So this is something called a subquery. So for this subquery, we have a temporary table that we created. And then the where will go, the where will be executed. So it will take up only the ones less than ranking 4. Then the select will be executed to get the company and the profits. Then the order by will be executed, and that's how we get the final code. Wait, did I change something? No. Why did I changed something. Okay, if you have more questions, then you can. Does anybody have any more questions? So here, the next few slides are going to be on join and the Cartesian product and everything. So there's something called union and union all, a set operator that joins two different tables. So what does a union do is it combines two tables. It's not like a join. It's like a join based on depending on the column. But here the very important thing that we need to remember is all the columns of both the tables must be of the same data type. Right. So if you have an employee table and a customer table, then you'll have name, age, and name, age, if for example, because of year or something, year joining a year, and then you're trying to join with the employee table, it must be in the same order as the employee table, like name, age, and year. It should be the same. Only then you can combine. Now you may ask why this union is necessary when we have a join. Sometimes it's very sometimes you're comparing from two different products, you're comparing their logs or something like that, which actually gives out the same type of query structure or a data type structure. Then union or union will be very important to combine those two tables. I'm writing it. I actually mentioning it here is because when I was studying, I never thought union will be asked, but they were asked in interviews. Union, because I didn't actually think the union will be something that will be used in the real world. We need to know, but union is something we kind of got to know, and it will be questioned. And union all, the difference between union all is union gives you the non-duplicate values. Only if it's unique to both the tables it will give you, but union all does everything. Even if there's a duplicate, it gives you all. Right? Okay. That's one. Then there's something called a cross join. So cross join is something called a full outer join. I don't know why we use it, but sometimes you just need to know it. Doesn't union help for joining by rows? No, union doesn't help by joining by rows. No, it doesn't help when you see joining by rows, it's not like a join statement where you join by rows. It actually just combines one table to another. It's like in a order fashion. So the first table will be there and the second table will be added kind of into a different table. So two tables will be combined with one on top of one of the other, and they make another table. That's how it does. So full outer join, basically it's like every pair is connected to every other row combination. So all the columns have every other column combination, and that's how the cross join is, Cartesian join. And then there are different types of joins we have. We have inner join, left join, right join, and outer join. So inner join only when anything that is intersection of both the tables, you will get that as an output. A left join is anything that is intersection to one table, and everything on the left table will come. For left join. Right join is like everything on the right side of the table. There's actually a running joke with all SQL administrator and data analysts. It's like, why there's even a right join? Because you can just put it as a left join and make it a left join. And you can swap the tables and make it a left join. But we have a right join. And right join is hardly ever used in the real world. But there is a right join, and full join is basically like full outer join that we just bought. It's like a Cartesian product. Both the tables, everything will be connected to everything, and you get both the tables completely. And any of the values that is not there in the other table will actually be filled by null unless you use something called a coalesce, COLEASCE. You use the command coalesce. So if there's any null value, you can say instead of putting null, put a 0 in. That's what coalesce is used for. This may not be asked in interviews. This is something in working knowledge for a data engineer, but anybody working with data. So these are the different joins that we have. We'll do a question on join. So this is where join on will come. So I didn't write the select statement for that. Sorry about that. I should have put in a select statement. So basically how the select statement works, or the template, the command template is select. For example, you are combining what tables? Two tables. Like the titles and workshop table or something like titles and price workshop table. So actually, question. So okay, so you have like two different tables, table 1 and table 2, for example, and you want some columns in table 1 and some columns in table 2, but you want to make it, but you want everything from table 1. You want everything from table 1, and anything that is an intersection with table 1 and table 2, you use left join. So you can say select table 1, table 1 dot column name, and table 2 or comma table 2 dot column name from table 1, join table 2 on on whatever is unique to both the tables, but they can help join you. So so table 1 may have an ID and table 2 may have an ID. So that will be like join. So that's where join on will come. So so the table 1 will be like the first table or the left table, and the table 2 will be the right table. So if it is left joined, then table 1 will get all the information. So table 1 table on, and then whatever we have on ID, on a particular ID. Okay. What is a subquery? Like we just now we saw in our problem, the subqueries is basically something, another query embedded in a main query. Okay, that is what a subquery is. So subquery will have will be in part of will have a select. It can also be an insert, update, and delete. And it can have all the operators. It's a regular full SQL query, but it is embedded in another SQL query. That's what is called a subquery. And subqueries has certain rules. Like it must have enclosed parameters. It must have the if whatever columns, like you can't from the subquery you can't call in more columns to the main table if you have not already called in the subquery. For example, you have a subquery employee or some employee table, and you're trying to get the employee age in the main query, but you have not already asked in the subquery, then you can't call in the main query. So how many columns that you're calling in the subquery is only the columns that you can call in the main query. Because subquery, imagine it as creating a temporary table. So from the name table, it creates another subtable based off the subquery. And then, so that query will be the table from that table will be the table from where the other query will be questioning from. So if that subtable doesn't have all the tables that the query is asking for, then you're not going to get the answer. So you should make sure the number of queries that you're asking is already there in the subquery. Then the order by command cannot be used in subquery. So if you use an order by, there's no use, because order by is mostly for the output. It doesn't change the query, the format in the table. It actually just gives us the output of the table. It doesn't change how the data is written in the query, in the table, in the original table, or even in the subtable. So order by will not be very much useful in the subquery. The subqueries that return more than one row can only be used by multiple value operators such as in. So if you're using, if you're returning multiple rows, you use in operator instead of is equal to, right? The select list cannot include any references to blob, array, clob, or any of the references to any of the array functions. Okay, and a subquery cannot be immediately enclosed in a set function. The between operator cannot be used with subquery. So between operator is not used in subquery. So if you're using like in the where clause, if you're using between this and that again is actually only for the formatting on the outside. It doesn't change anything in the query, so it doesn't affect the subquery. So usually subqueries, if you just see the way we wrote right now, it's actually like in the in parentheses here, right? In parentheses here, but it's actually a better way to do it is with clause. With clause will be better way to do a subquery than actually just putting it within a query. Even in an interview, it's better to you can say, hey, okay, oh, this is a subquery, and showcase that you know the subquery, but you can end up using the with clause. So basically, you can use like with, just name it as a temporary variable as, and then write the subquery in, and then you can just use it in the main query, right? You can use it in the main query. So for subqueries, instead of using it as writing within there, but sometimes for a small query it's okay, but when you're writing in production level, actually it's always better to use with clause instead of writing it in subquery. Actually, I always like to write it in with clause, because using subquery, I always get confused with what I'm looking at. But if you have it in with clause, because you will, each time you see a with and the clause, you know that, oh, okay, here there's one table created, oh, here there's one other table created. So it's easier to visualize it too. for me personally, and even I was taught the same to to like write it with the with clause, be easy to visualize. And actually some code reviews will actually tell you that, oh, why don't you just write a with clause? So whenever I get a code review, it's mostly if I'm doing a subquery, they'll be like, why don't you just write with the with clause? And they'll ask me to change it with that, with the with clause. So because it's easier to visualize it. So when you see a with clause, you know that, hey, there's a temporary table being created instead of actually having it within a main query. So with is basically for subqueries, but it's just a different with clause. Okay. So this is question time. I don't know how we want to do this. Does everybody want to stop here and start this from this question, the next session? Or how would you like to do this? Or do you want to talk about it in the Slack channel? Or in the next section, I can start from this, go over this question, answer this question, finish up our window functions, and then finish up the question there, and then talk about data modeling.
Thank you, Andrew. So our next session will be in 2 weeks, and like you said, we'll be doing advanced. We'll recommend folks to like review the recording to go over initial stuff. I guess the last thing I want to add is where would we find the answers?
Answers I can share in the same group. The problem 1 answers and the problem 2 answers I'll share in the same group.
Okay, perfect. Right then, so I guess we'll wrap up this session. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are, and I hope you have a great rest of the week. All right,
Thank you all for joining. Bye.